everyone. I'm Mary Stegmeyer from NACAC's communications team, coming to you live from our headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Today we'll be talking about NACAC's new membership model with David Burge, the association's president, and Kim Johnston, our director of membership, affiliate relations, and governance. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, happy to be here.
For those of you who are watching online, thank you also for joining us. Say hello in the comments section and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if you have questions, let us know and we'll answer them at the end of the broadcast. But I think it's time we get started. So
Great.
we know that our members want to learn more about this new model. With membership category changes and a new due structure taking effect in a few years, let's get down to some of the basics. What will members actually be voting on at the annual membership meeting in Salt Lake City?
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for being here, particularly if you're from the Hawaii affiliate and it's breakfast time, or if you're with international and it's somewhere in the middle of the night. The idea of this membership model change in terms of how we stage it is not immediately clear, right? So in other words, the bylaws articulate two very distinct processes. Process number one is the actual dues amount and the dues structure, which is decided upon by the board, right? That's something that the board, whether we're having a single increase within our existing structure or we are having a change like this, which is far more comprehensive, the actual dollar amounts and the way that we choose to bill and define those things are decided by the board, and they decided back in February to move forward with this primarily institutional-based model, which I know we'll get into in greater detail a little bit later on. Now, what we're voting on in the membership meeting, and again, I would remind everybody that this is a member decision because the bylaws determine who is a member. So really what we're voting on in Salt Lake is the definition of who constitutes a voting member and a non-voting member, and sort of by effect, who is not a member at all. So when you come to the membership meeting, and I know I'll see everybody there along with several thousand of your best friends to listen to the discussion about this and ultimately cast a vote about this, you will be voting only on the bylaws which determines who can be that said member.
Very specifically, it would be Article 3 of the bylaws, Section 5, 6, and 7. And if you want to see the details of the membership changes, those are on the NACAC website.
Did I not say that? Did I not? 3, 5, 6, and 7. I thought I said that.
For those keeping score at home.
Article 3, 5, 6, and 7.
And since we're still setting the stage here, let's talk a little bit about background. Why is this change needed?
So, I would say that, well, first of all, I point out that this has been a long time coming. And by a long time coming, I mean that I joined the board 2 years ago, and we were already talking about what a membership change would look like. So this is not something we're running into. It's actually the end of a very long process with multiple points for feedback along the way. At the core of it, though, is that the membership model that we have right now is very complex, right? There's 33 categories? 32, we've already got rid of one of them. 32 categories of membership, which I remember when we had, during the early parts of this conversation, we had our consultant in, who that was one of the largest and most complex membership models that he's ever seen, and he does this for a living, right? So there's some complexity that may not be necessary within our existing model. And then within that, we set about to redefine a model that would do several things. The first, it would be to actually encourage trust among memberships through that simplicity, that would promote better engagement, meaning we're bringing in members who are earlier in their careers with the hope that we could get them engaged, help them train as leaders. We would want to make sure that we're lockstep with our affiliates and that we are improving our affiliate relations in whatever membership model that we have. We're building on the strengths of the organization already, and the big important thing here is transparent and inclusive, right? Like the goals were to try to grow our membership, do so in a way consistent with our values to increase our ability to influence everything that we do within the profession.
Always one of the guiding principles as we went through this process is the way to expand the membership so that it's not just one or two individuals in an admission office or a counseling office, that are able to take advantage of NACAC resources. It is now open to the whole office, and the principal representative won't have to make those decisions about who gets to join and who doesn't, because everyone is automatically included.
Right. I might point out too, so this is the enrollment manager in me, that like the organization's membership has been functionally flat for the last 3 years, right? Like, in other words, we cannot seem to crack that 16,000 member threshold, which is a great size for an organization, but we all know is not representative of the number of people in the profession doing the work. So whatever we create has to try to bring on more to be reflective of the work that's actually happening.
This is all good information so far, so thank you. And for everyone watching at home or in their offices, remember, if you have any questions for us, just leave them in the comment section below this live video, and we'll get to them on just a couple of minutes. But for now, let's just talk about the idea itself. Where did this idea for this change come from?
Well, you know, the first of all, I would say that a healthy organization needs to be reflective on its mission and values, and a big part of that is all wrapped up in who are the members of the organization and who are we serving. And so, you know, right now there's, you know, the organization in recent past has gone through a lot of resets, right? So we had this big change to the CEPP, SPGP, and that was a big deal, right? We thought about it, we were actively engaged with a number of members, and it's so core to who we are, we made that change. The membership model is exactly the same, which is, are we finding ourselves with what we know about how college counseling works today, truly capturing everyone that we need to in the organization. Now, this specific plan, though, was developed over years with help of consultants and surveys and data analysis, and so actually the plan we've arrived at was one of several that were considered, right? And in fact, we sent out surveys. Several thousand of you, maybe even some of you who are watching the event today, responded and provided some feedback. We tested a couple of different models to ask very specifically, would you be interested in an institutional-based model? Would you be interested in a different model that focused more on individual membership? And so we gathered all of that together, and then we at the board table reviewed exactly what the financial implications would be. I mean, the whole point of this too, by the way, is to be revenue neutral. Where one of the first bits of feedback that I heard was actually a concern that we wouldn't make enough money in this model, and I felt confident saying I think we would. I don't think we'll make more money than we do right now, but we actually had a financial model that we evaluated in our final 2 or 3 options to make the final decision.
Now, you mentioned surveys. Affiliates and members did have the chance to weigh in on some of these proposed changes. What did you all hear back from them?
Well, first of all, before we had even decided on a model, there was several surveys and several people who were involved in making those sort of initial decisions. Ever since we have released what has been sort of the final model, or what we're putting forward, I would say the predominance of feedback has been, what about me, right? Tell me how I fit into this. Questions of does my status change? Does my role in the organization change? So whether it's an independent educational consultant, whether it's a small office of school counselors, whether it's retired members, I think there are people who have very legitimate questions about what that reality means for them. In the end, this model was chosen because we specifically asked people, like, what do you think about this model? And in those surveys came back compelling evidence that, in fact, an institutional or predominantly institutional-based model was the preferred model.
Yeah, that was an overwhelming response as we were developing this to go to an institutionally based model.
Right.
One thing that's important to know about this new model is that the cost won't go up for every member institution. And in fact, it will go down for some, depending on how many members they've had or will have. Now, that said, does NACAC have a plan for helping members that just can't afford the change at this time?
Yeah, so some of the initial feedback when people were asking these questions about, the what-ifs questions, right? We have to be completely transparent that we don't know the answers to all the what-ifs. Like, any change this systemic has a certain amount of unknown in it. I believe that we've managed a lot of that, but it's impossible to manage all of that. And so what the board voted to do was to allocate a sum of money that would help any institutions if we discover that there's a hardship. Because if we discover that there's a hardship, we don't want that to persist, right? So we would want to fix that. But while we're fixing that, we wouldn't want to lose members while that's happening. And so the board has asked the staff to be very to include within its budget assumptions additional funding to help bridge through that period. The second thing that the board has tried to do is actually through working through Kim's area and other people in the NACAC staff to actually develop plans for interventions about making the case for membership models. So in an institutional or predominantly institutional model, there are decision makers on campus who will need to decide whether or not to have the institution become a member. We want to make the case directly to them and have asked for more intentionality in that effort after the new model is implemented.
That's great. Great information. I just want to pause again and remind anyone who's watching in the office, at home, if you've got any questions, please just put them in the comment section under the live video, and we'll get to them later in the broadcast. Under this new model, some institutions will be able to extend the membership benefits to a greater number of professionals, which I know has been a positive. Can you explain how that works and why it's a good thing?
The membership dues will be based on the size of institute or the size of the staff, and the scale is on 1 to 8. So for 1 to 8 members of a staff member, the dues will be a certain amount. It will be more for 9 to 16 and so on. So if you have 7 members, it would be a fixed amount.
Let's dive into a couple other scenarios here.
Okay.
So say I'm an office of 1. What does this new model mean for me?
It's a good question, and that's some of the feedback and some of the questions that we've received after rolling out this sort of final proposal. The gist of it is that really for you it won't change in any dramatic sense, right? If you are truly a 1-member office, you will have what amounts to a dues increase. So every several years, the organization increases dues. The last time was in 2018. And so if you're, let's say, a secondary school counselor, then you'll have an increase from 205 to 250, right? Now, what we think will happen is that we will find that some folks who, because of this new ability to have people coattail into the organization, can find other people within their offices to become members. Now, that's not as cut and dry as it sounds, but we absolutely believe that what we'll find more often is that people will bring 2 and 3 and 4 members who were previously just single members within the organization.
Now, another scenario some of our members have wondered about: what if someone doesn't have institutional support for their membership? Is there still a way for them to join?
Right. I mean, the institutional model does suppose that there is institutional support to join. And I would remind you that, again, we want to put more energy and effort into making the case for membership to those decision makers. What we're hearing from many is that there are certainly questions in times of budget that make that a little bit more risky, if you will. But again, that's why we've tried to put the money wrapped around it. I mean, if an institution has a philosophical difference of opinion with NACAC, then there are very few options, right? Like that would be hard to overcome. That said, we believe that there are just as many, if not more, opportunities for schools that are not presently members through this institutional approach to become members. And in fact, members of our board have reported to us that within their home state, that the school district is not allowed to pay for a personal membership, but is allowed to pay for an institutional membership. So there are some risks that we're trying to mitigate, but there are some opportunities that we're trying to maximize.
Gotcha. This is all, again, great information to have. And so, again, for anyone watching out there, if you have questions, put them in the comment section. We'll add them into our lineup here. But now let's get back to some of the nitty gritty. If I work for an institution that has an admission staff of 9, do I have the option to pay for just 8 so I can hit that lower price point? And I'm looking at Kim here.
No,
Good.
no, you will be required to pay that 9 to 16 rate. But that being said, there may be some other individuals on your campus or within your institution that may benefit from a NACAC membership that you could then add if you have student staff or some part-time staff. Some of those individuals, you may be able to include them to fill out your roster to get up to 16.
And I think we want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in one of those categories, we want every potential member to be a member. And we also think that over the course of time, under a predominantly institutional-based membership model, that we will have new creative definitions of memberships that will develop over time, where we would say to ourselves, if what constitutes primary engagement in college counseling. That could change over time as more people in your building become attached to that effort, and then by effect become attached to the organization. And so we can grow bigger and bigger within that scheme.
So kind of big picture, that's where we're...
Yeah, no, I think it opens up opportunities for different types of thinking.
Now thinking again more to the individuals, if we go to think about some of our individual member segments, for example, let's talk about what will these changes mean for retired members?
Yeah, no, I know that's one that we've heard about and take very seriously. And before I give an answer, I guess I want to reiterate that it's very important, the voice of retired members. We want to preserve that within the organization. This change, though, with retired members, moving them to a non-voting category is consistent with many of our sister institutions or organizations, but not all of them. And I guess I would offer, in the course of hearing some of the arguments around this, a distinction between those that are what I'll call pure retired, right? Meaning they're not engaged at any level, which actually very few, right? I mean, like, I find that people in this line of work remain engaged in this line of work and for times after their formal retirement, versus, let's say, a second career, right? So I work in an admissions office right now. I may retire from that operation, but then maybe I become an independent counselor or an independent educational consultant, right? So the definition of retired in this context is literally that you don't fit into any of those other categories. And if you fit into one of the many other categories in a second career or a job change, then you're still going to be a membership, and you still get all of a voting member, that is, and you still get all of those the benefits associated with it. The idea here is not to try to box out, but the idea here is that there are finite numbers of opportunities for involvement. And we want to try to encourage some of the members who haven't been in the profession as long to be into that state.
Sure. Another group, what will these changes mean for our affiliate membership?
I don't think this is going to have a huge impact on the affiliates, because we haven't added any voting categories. And the one thing that affiliates are required is to have the same voting member types that NACAC does. They may have additional voting types. So this doesn't particularly impact them as far as having to change their bylaws right away to make sure that they are compliant with that. So that's, I think, the biggest impact. As far as the assembly is concerned, assembly representation is based on a proportion of NACAC membership that are also affiliate members. That we will be studying over the next couple of years to see if that will change. We just did a census for the assembly, so the count that we have now will be in effect for the 2018, 2019, and 2020 assemblies, and by then I think we'll have a better handle on whether or not affiliates will be impacted with their representation.
Well, I know that we're closing in our time limit, and thank you to all of you for joining us. But to wrap up, we have a few more questions. Maybe if we could just chat a little bit about, we've touched on this, but what are some of the biggest benefits of the new membership model, and And why is this an exciting, good thing for NACAC and its membership?
Well, I might start part of the reasons I voted for it, and I will vote for it, is that it brings some simplicity to what is a very complex and complicated process. It allows for us, for individual members, to bring along more, right? And I think of something that just happened to me, right? So I'm in the organization. I've been in the organization for 20 years. I am a leader within the organization, at least for right now, and I was training some of the new staff on the SPGP, and I asked the question of particularly some of the understaff, do you know what NACAC is? And I did not get every hand raised, right? And I don't blame them for that, because the model we have now somewhat encourages a finite number of memberships, because at a certain point it becomes cost prohibitive. So now the big benefit, in addition to the simplicity, is being able to grow the membership, which collectively raises everybody's voice, right? Everybody gets more powerful the larger the organization becomes. And so we will, whether it's through the government relations work or the days on the Hill, whether it's just simply participation in the annual conference, everything gets a little bit bigger and carries some greater gravity as a result of it. And so, and to me, that's somewhat what we're trying to do within the organization is collectively leverage our power, and we leverage that power to the issues that are most important to us. Therefore, it follows that sort of the bigger we are and the more inclusive we are, then the more likely we are to wield that power in positive ways that affect the students, because it all obviously tracks back to the students.
And one of the areas that we found that we have some underrepresentation are those entry-level admissions professionals, particularly at some of the larger publics. And for the health of the association, we need to start attracting and retaining those new professionals to keep us going as we move through this.
Okay, we have a question.
We have our first question.
One of our viewers, so thank you for sending this along. The question is, does the voting status of retirees change for affiliates too?
It does not have to, no. There are many affiliates that offer voting membership to those member types that are not voting in NACAC. So if retirees are voting at the affiliate level and the affiliates would like to maintain them as voting members, they may certainly do so.
And one last thing, we should talk a little bit about timeline. When will this new structure become effective?
So I think that's a you question.
Okay.
Like, I could try to make something
Yes.
up, but I would probably be wrong.
If and when the new bylaws are approved at the 2019 assembly, it will have, annual membership, or 2018 annual membership meeting.
There you go.
The new member types will go into effect for the 2020 membership year, which will start on January 1st, 2020. The 2019 or the 2020 bills or renewal invoices will go out in October of 2019, and we will use 2019 to be in touch with the principal representatives to ask institutions and organizations to update their rosters so that we have a sense of what the admission staff looks like on any particular institution. So when we send out those renewal notices in October of 2019, they'll be accurate and reflective of the staff.
Are we winding down? Because I have
We
one
are
more point.
winding down.
Okay, because I also want to make a point.
But I will cede the floor to
Okay.
you.
sorry, stand back. No, I want to point out too that we're focused on the membership model. That's what was advertised. That's why you're here. But there are a whole host of other bylaw changes at the membership meeting that we're also going to be voting on. I would call some of them cosmetic as it relates to defining terms and with more precision, but not all of them fit into that category. And so to get your voting cards ready for that meeting, because there's actually more voting on bylaws than just this, and I hope that we have a strong showing, because we need representation on all of those things.
Yeah, so everyone watching, on your to-do list for conference, make sure that you include the annual membership meeting. Very important this year.
2:30 on Saturday, the 29th of September.
There you go. Well, I think that is our time. Thank you both for joining us. This was great information, and thanks to all of you who tuned in. We will see you next time on Facebook Live.
See you until then.
Bye.
Thanks.